Coming in at number 10 is the Maker. Despite his heroics in the 616 universe, we got to witness a spectacular fall from grace for the Reed Richards of the Ultimate Comics universe, otherwise known as Earth 1610. The Magneto of this universe unleashed the Ultimatum Wave, which caused a tidal wave that took out thousands of people. That event, combined with the stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal, caused Reed Richards to completely snap and blow up his childhood home. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes and was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. Reed somehow returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker and set out on a twisted quest to make the world his idea of perfect. He destroyed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power and launched an attack on Washington, D.C. The Maker then went on to do a lot of really twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, proving that if not kept in check by a strong moral compass, Mr. Fantastic's amazing mind can be ultimately a source of terror. And now, he's literally recreating the Ultimate Universe by manipulating the timeline of another universe. Number 9, Ghost Spider. Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider, is Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker's first love interest, but from the alternate reality of Earth 65. In this reality, Gwen Stacy is bitten by the spider, granting her powers and keeping Peter Parker as some nerd, but also her initial love interest. Gwen was granted superhuman strength, speed, toughened flesh, and pretty much all the spider-based powers that the regular Spider-Man would possess. Where she differs in a pretty big way is that after Gwen is depowered, she instead successfully bonds with the Venom symbiote. Gwen learned to find a healthy balance with the symbiote. When she first bonded with Venom, thanks to a Matt Murdock version of Kingpin, she was rage-fueled and looking for revenge, but over time, she realized that she needed to control that and give Venom better qualities to enhance in order to find balance with the symbiote. In a way, Venom and Gwen became even greater heroes, helping each other out. Number 8, King Thor. It goes without saying that Thor, Odin's son, being a literal god, has an incredibly long lifespan. His father Odin is millions of years old, and Thor is meant to eventually exceed his dad as the new Allfather. In the alternate timeline of Earth 14412, he successfully does that. During the War of the Realms in this universe, Thor sacrificed his eye to obtain the knowledge to defeat Malekith the Accursed and was made Allfather of Asgard. Now at some point, Thor eventually left Asgard and joined Omnipotent City's Ministry of Interdeity Justice, meaning Thor became a cosmic god cop, preventing wars among various pantheons and arresting gods that broke their godly laws. After spending some time as a sentient planet, assisting Sorcerer Supreme Daemon Hellstrom, surviving in the frozen jungles of Jotunheim, falling in love with a frost giant, and having a few kids, Thor returned to Asgard and inherited the power of the Allfather from Odin, renaming it the Thor Force. It was after all those countless years that Thor's brother Loki instigated the annihilation of all life on Earth, just out of spite. But Thor still carried on, with the loss of his friends and comrades causing Thor to become a stern and cynical ruler, just like Odin was before him. Funnily enough, Wolverine also survived this long as well. I don't know how, but he did. Number 7, General James Howlett. Speaking of Wolverine, in the second volume of Extreme X-Men, joining a team of multi-dimensional mutants that hunt down evil Professor Xaviers across dimensions is a much different version of Wolverine. Hailing from the reality of Earth 12025, this version of our feral mutant is the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada and Viceroy of Her Majesty's expedition to Shangri-La. He is like a version of Wolverine who is also mixed with President Theodore Roosevelt. General James Howlett is an adventurer and hero alongside his partner and lover, the demigod Hercules, or Heracles, however you want to say it. These two shared a love that was built after years and years of working together, and their bond was so strong that Hercules gave James a super cool upgrade in the form of a skeleton made of adamantine, which is a godly golden metal even stronger than adamantium, making Wolverine completely indestructible and immune to telepathic attacks. Unfortunately though, due to the god-on-mortal nature of the relationship, the Greek gods banished the pair to Tartarus, where they basically just fight hordes and hordes of lost and damned souls for 4 years before escaping. Number 6, Wagnerine. The Legion of Night comes from a world where Mr. Sinister corrupted the genomes of those who underwent the mutant resurrection protocols on Krakoa. Because of this, Sinister's control over humanity and mutantdom became supreme. One of his experiments was combining the genetics of different mutants to create powerful chimeras to serve him, and it made for some crazy awesome comic book moments. A particularly special project was turning the genes of Nightcrawler into a band of teleporting assassins. But the Legion of Night, while having leadership in the form of Sinister's female clone, Mother Righteous, also had field leaders. One of which was the mutant Banshee possessed by the spirit of variance called Vox Ignis, and the other was Mr. Sinister's favorite Nightcrawler chimera, Wagnerine. Mixing the DNA of both Nightcrawler and Wolverine, Wagnerine, funnily enough, was more of a mix of Laura Kinney, X-23, and Nightcrawler, and she made for an excellent assassin and leader for Mother Righteous once she had been freed from the control of Mr. Sinister. Wagnerine ended up beating the odds and procreated with the Cyclops Nightcrawler, aka Summer Knight, to create a golden mutant teleporter who seemingly teleported to a random location immediately after her birth, causing Summer Knight to lose control of himself and fall victim to the influence of Sinister once again. Eventually, it was revealed that Mother Righteous had actually taken the child, and when that was revealed to Wagnerine, she defected. Now 900 years later, she was finally able to bring down Mother Righteous and go on to try and live a life with her golden little baby. Number 5, Old Man Logan. In the alternate universe where we are introduced to Old Man Logan and Old Man Hawkeye, everything is in shambles. It's an apocalyptic wasteland, and all because the villains, under the leadership of the Red Skull, had coordinated a massive attack on the world's superheroes, leaving only a very, very few alive. Logan himself was tricked into wiping out every single member of the X-Men, and while that is tragic, I do have to say it's incredibly impressive. Impressive or not though, it drove Logan mad with grief and he vowed to become a pacifist. He retired to a quiet farming family life, letting the world go to hell around him. But we need a story, so that cannot fly. Eventually being short on money and needing to help his family, he joins Hawkeye on an adventure across America to deliver a briefcase of super soldier serum. After he goes on this grand adventure, defeats the Red Skull and returns home, the Hulk gang had completely wiped out his family. This is when he finally gets to pop his claws for the first time since the story begins. He wipes out the entire gang and eviscerates the Hulk himself, and then eventually finds his way to the main Marvel universe. Another version of him even gets the powers of Venom as well, which is super cool. Number 4, Age of Apocalypse Nightcrawler. In the Age of Apocalypse, Nightcrawler is very similar to his Earth 616 counterpart, except he's an incredibly capable warrior brandishing dual blades at all times, and he isn't really as lovable as he would be normally. This Nightcrawler hates the church, having had a traumatic experience when he was younger, which is a far cry from the original Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler in this universe is also close to his mother, Mystique, which is why he gladly takes on the Darkholme last name. This Nightcrawler believes his biological father is Sabretooth, since Mystique stated that she had gone to the trouble of, quote, finding a father with fur when Nightcrawler complains he is cold. This version of Nightcrawler actually chooses to remain in the main 616 reality and joins up with X-Force. But being on Earth 616, he does get mistaken for the original Nightcrawler, which he does not appreciate. Like at one point, he even pushes Kitty Pryde for mistaking him for a resurrected Nightcrawler. Now while working with X-Force, he has successfully took out his reality's Blob by teleporting a shark into his stomach, which devoured Blob from the inside out, which is terrifying, and Iceman, who he led into a factory boiler room, where I guess you can imagine what happened next. Number 3, Ghost Panther. Ghost Panther from Marvel's Warp World is a combination of the Wakandan prince T'Challa, aka Black Panther, and the demonic spirit of vengeance, Ghost Rider. This combination is perfect to explore a new aspect of culture meeting mythology, which is the excuse we're gonna go with to justify a hellfire skeleton that rides a giant fiery panther. Don't you dare look at me and tell me that this is not amazing. don't you dare. In this story, T'Challa was exiled from Wakanda for his arrogance and came to America, becoming a stunt rider named Johnny Blaze, which is very original. After an accident leaves him fighting for his life, a demon offers him his life in exchange for becoming the all-powerful Ghost Panther. In case you don't realize why this is awesome, let me reiterate that this is King T'Challa as a hellfire-wielding spirit of vengeance riding on top of a hellfire-covered panther. Need I say more? Number 2, Punisher Max. Punisher Max was an adult comic, and for a guy whose main thing is ushering people to the pearly gates, it makes sense that this setting suits his character best. Removing the Punisher from all the costumes and superpowers of the regular Marvel universe and dropping him right into an America facing the early days of the War on Terror, it kicked off with the CIA trying to recruit Frank, which sets off a violent political game. This Frank Castle was a veteran of the Cold War, running Black Ops alongside Nick Fury in Vietnam, and he is not someone you want to mess around with. Like, he lights out Microchip during the first storyline just for helping the CIA to even find Punisher. His enemies here are also much more threatening and scarily realistic compared to anything that Earth 616 has thrown at the Punisher, with a big shout out to Barracuda specifically. Another former soldier just as ruthless and skilled as Frank is. Punisher Max shows the very real physical and emotional damage that Frank Castle's crusade would cause him in real life, obviously with a tiny suspension of disbelief that comes with it being a comic book. If you choose to give it a read, just be warned, it is extremely graphic. Number 1, End of Time Doom. Earth 14412 is home to a variant of Doctor Doom who refers to himself as the Fist of Iron, the Starbrand Supreme, and the Master of Mystic Vengeance. This is End of Time Doom. In this reality, King Loki had destroyed all of humanity, with Doom being one of the few survivors. This gave Doom the opportunity to infuse himself with the powers of Iron Fist, Starbrand, the Sorcerer Supreme, and Ghost Rider, making him practically a god. King Thor and his 3 daughters, the Goddesses of Thunder, restored life to the Earth, and Doom showed up conveniently to conquer it. He completely owned the 3 daughters of Old King Thor, and he was only stopped when Old King Thor, who wielded the Thor Force, was also empowered by the Phoenix Force. It's such an epic version of Doctor Doom, of which there are honestly very many, but this one is my favorite. Number 10, Intelligent Design God Hulk. What if Planet Hulk? Most comic book readers, and especially fans of Marvel and the Hulk specifically, know of the storyline where the Illuminati banished the Hulk from Earth to send him to another planet. He ended up crash landing on Sakaar and becoming a gladiator turned liberator turned ruler of the planet until his ship self-destructed, taking out his family and bringing him back to Earth with a vengeance that no guilty person was safe from. What if Planet Hulk ends up asking the question, what if the Illuminati's banishment had hit its original target? In this story, Hulk lands on an incredibly peaceful and serene planet instead of Sakaar. And sure, he goes a bit ragey at first, but he eventually realizes the planet is inhabited by a race of peaceful creatures. Over long periods of time, the Hulk helps this race to evolve and become a thriving civilization. They end up viewing the Hulk as their god, and he basically acts as one that leads them to wealth and prosperity. It's one of the few Hulk stories that doesn't end in tears, and I'm more than happy to talk about it for that reason alone. Number 9, Dark Claw. So, what happens if you take Logan Howlett and Bruce Wayne and just mash them up together? You subtract Robbins, add some Canada, carry the 2, and you'll find you get Logan Wayne. This awesome character is from the Amalgam universe of Earth 9602. Now obviously, Bruce Wayne has no actual powers of his own unless you count his undeniable skill. So most of the abilities belonging to Logan Wayne come from his Wolverine half. A massively powerful regenerative healing factor, slowed aging, superhuman senses, plus his healing factor and adamantium skeleton allow him to have a degree of super strength. But thanks to his Wayne half of things, Dark Claw is a master detective and master of martial arts, stealth, acrobatics, and intimidation. After he witnessed the passing of his parents, Logan went to live with his uncle up in Alberta, Canada, who then also lost his life to poachers. So yes, it's still as dark as both Bruce and Logan Logan's backstories. He then went to kick it with some nuns and then joined up with the Canadian Air Force. At some point, he joined the Weapon X program and learned of his mutation and gained his claws alongside his incredibly dangerous rival, Creed H. Quinn, who would become a Sabretooth Joker hybrid named Hyena. Logan Wayne would go back to New Gotham City, where he decided to avenge his parents' and uncle's deaths by donning the costume and name of Dark Claw. If you like this list so far, make sure to drop a like, and to check out part 1, where we covered 10 more awesome Marvel variants better than the originals. Number 8, Earth Ascani Apocalypse. As some of you may know, Apocalypse and the mutant Nathan Summers, aka Cable, have a lot of history together. When Nathan was a freshly born little bean, he was infected with the techno-organic virus by Apocalypse as a test of his worthiness to become a host for Apocalypse. When the X-Men fought off Apocalypse and recovered Nathan, Cyclops begrudgingly agreed to send Nathan away to the future with the hope of him being cured. Earth 4932, or Earth Ascani, is that future. Taking place in the late 36th century, where Apocalypse ruled the entire Earth, when Nathan arrived, he was immediately cloned just in case he could not be saved. When this Apocalypse found out that Nathan was in the present, he sent out his forces to capture Nathan, but he had actually taken the clone instead. That clone would be raised up by Apocalypse with the hopes of him becoming the next host body for Apocalypse himself. Apocalypse named this clone Strife after a villain who fought him in the modern day, who was actually an adult Strife, which really confuses things, doesn't it? Since his current body had grown old and feeble, Apocalypse raised Strife to be extremely powerful as he planned to transfer his consciousness and power into Strife's body. Now, the real Nathan, who was being raised to be Cable by Jean Grey and Cyclops in this future world, ended up disrupting Apocalypse's plan, with the teenage Cable defeating this old and decrepit Apocalypse in combat. Number 7, Netflix Punisher. We have had 3 movies of debatable quality that have brought Frank Castle, the Punisher, to the screen. And while Ray Stevenson, rest in peace, and Thomas Jane, and I guess Dolph Lundgren did decent jobs as Frank Castle, when Jon Bernthal showed up as the Punisher in the 2nd season of Netflix's acclaimed Daredevil show, he did it better than anyone before him. Or at least for me, he did. It was the most believable version of the Punisher I had ever seen. Bernthal brought fury and intensity at all times, almost to the point of seeming positively insane, especially when compared with the morals of Matt Murdock, Daredevil. His character was also incredibly capable and brutal, as is necessary for the Punisher to even work in real life. When he got his own show in 2017, it brought everything to just a whole different level, telling a conspiracy story that also took a very interesting and pretty real look at PTSD in soldiers, while also bringing the right amount of brutality that you'd expect from a Punisher story. Even my mom liked this show, and she doesn't even read comics. That's the highest praise I know how to give. Number 6, Doctor Strange Fate. Doctor Strange Fate is the only amalgam character from the DC Marvel Amalgam universe who understood the mashed up nature of said universe, and he also survived its destruction, meaning he survived the alienation of the 2 biggest comic book companies, which is impressive to say the least. With the combined might of 2 magical masters of the mystic arts, Marvel's Doctor Strange and DC's Doctor Fate, combined with a little extra Marvel's Professor X special sauce, Amalgam's Charles Xavier toes the line between hero and villain to protect his universe. After saving Naboo, the Ancient One, Xavier was trained in the mystic and martial arts. In addition to being the world's supreme sorcerer, Strange Fate was also the world's most powerful telepath, putting him at a crazy level of power, and he was even able to sneak into Strange's consciousness and convince Doctor Strange to recreate the Amalgam universe as a pocket dimension. Number 5, Ultimate Spider-Man. The Ultimate Spider-Man comic run is considered by a lot of people to be one of the absolute best Spider-Man runs ever. Being one of the best things to come from writer Brian Michael Bendis, Ultimate Spider-Man revamped the origin of the Spider-Man character for modern audiences in the 2000s, but also made Peter Parker even younger. The story follows the original story pretty closely, with only minor tweaks and changes that make it even better, like the fixes made to the Clone Saga story, or even the changes made to the Venom symbiote. The Earth 1610 comic book run had one writer at the helm, which really helped to maintain consistency throughout the story, whereas Earth 616's Amazing Spider-Man carried on for 50 years and had many writers coming in to build the story, unfortunately giving it areas that kind of lacked to some degree. degree. Ultimate Spider-Man took a great idea and then ran with it, building up an incredible cast of characters and injecting a great deal of emotion and heart into the story as it took familiar ideas in crazy new directions. Number 4, Ultimate Loki. Loki Laufeyson in the main Marvel universe is a pretty dastardly devil. He's always got schemes on schemes and is just doing what gods of mischief best, using his sorcery. But he's also somewhat redeemable. The Loki Odinson of Marvel's Ultimate Universe, however, is kind of just a madman, but one with the ability to warp reality. He could retcon history into anything he desired by either creating events that never happened or erasing events as if they never happened. He could create copies of himself, change the color of the skies, render himself near impervious to harm, even from Thor's hammer, and summon armies of monsters. One of the first things this Loki does while a member of the Warriors 3 alongside Thor and their brother Balder is visit his giantess mother, steal the Norn stones, and completely take the life of his brother, Balder. He then took on the guise of Baron Zemo during World War II and led an attack on Asgard with frost giants and some super soldier Germans that he created. This got him banished to the room without doors, just like he planned. He was eventually freed from the room, and unlike his brothers who had been reborn as mortal men, Loki was still a god, and an incredibly powerful one. He would be one of the main threats faced by the Ultimates when they formed up, but was eventually depowered by Odin. Number 3, Spider-Man 2099. Instead of getting bitten by a radioactive super spider, Miguel O'Hara's DNA was biologically mixed with a spider's DNA to save his life after he was forcibly hooked on a not far off future substance by his own employer. If that sounds convoluted, well, yeah, but it also sounds right at home in a comic book. Although the process of gaining his powers differed from Peter Parker, Miguel was still granted many of the same abilities at a pretty similar level. One thing that differs largely is Miguel's spider sense. He doesn't have one. Instead, Miguel has advanced super senses similar to someone like Daredevil or Wolverine. Miguel also has some abilities that are just wholly unique to him. For example, he possesses an incredible level of super speed as well as telepathic communication abilities, both of which are really freaking cool. He also has fangs and claws on his fingers and toes that he can use in combat. On top of all those powers though, Miguel is from the year 2099, which means that he naturally has a much more advanced set of technology at his disposal. But it's not just his powers that make him better. The Spider-Man 2099 story is awesome, but you'll have to do the reading to figure that out for yourself. Number 2, Tony Stark, Sorcerer Supreme. In all new X-Men Annual Number 1 from 2014, Marvel gave us a version of Tony Stark Iron Man from the temporary reality number of 591. Tony in this reality successfully brought together the Avengers to permanently end the threat of Thanos on the universe. Because of the Avengers accomplishing that insane feat of strength and saving the entire universe from the threat of Thanos, alien races of said universe rewarded the Earth and its heroes with advanced alien technology, allowing the Earth to become a utopia. Tony himself would start to lean more into his mystical side with all the extra time he had after saving the universe, eventually becoming the Sorcerer Supreme and being able to solve further conflicts without needing to do any kind of real fighting. Last I heard, this Tony was living youthfully comfortable at 126 years old. This isn't the only Tony to become the Sorcerer Supreme, but he is certainly one of the most accomplished. Number 1, Earth X Venom. In the alternate future of Earth 999, basically every single person has powers. Things have gone apocalyptic, and in an act of vengeance, the Venom symbiote bonded to the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, May does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced and honed spider sense, which was something the symbiote was never expecting to happen. Venom and her father Spider-Man go on to join the superpowered police force and fight crime and supervillain threats together. She eventually, after the death of Death itself, goes on to be recruited by Kang the Conqueror as part of a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse Twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers, plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers, plus a few extra, like what seems to be a rudimentary form of telepathy, and it is believed her symbiote could go on to mutate further to gain even more powers, which is a good way for Marvel to say, we can do whatever we want with this character. She's one of the coolest looking versions versions of Venom while also being one of the most capable.
Number 10. Night Spider. Night Spider is basically for fans who have ever wondered what it would be like if Black Cat became Spider-Man instead of Peter. Felicia Hardy is the spider-themed hero in her home reality of Earth 194. Felicia, however, didn't have any specific lessons in regards to great power comes with great responsibility in her origin story. Instead, she used her powers to continue a life of thievery and crime after inheriting them from a tarantula idol she stole. The idol bit her, giving her powers, which at first was awesome, but after a while led Night Spider to being unsatisfied since heists would become too easy for her. Looking for a new thrill, Night Spider decided to turn herself in to her best friend, police detective Jean DeWolf. Just as she was being transported back to the station after being arrested, the alternate spider hero Aranya appeared and petitioned Night Spider to join her in a fight to defend the multiverse as part of the End of the Spider-Verse event. Night Spider agreed, escaped custody, and joined up with the rest of the Spider Army. Number 9. Lady Spider. So we did spot Lady Spider in Across the Spider-Verse. She was actually in the lobby area of Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099's HQ, but she wasn't one of the main characters in the story, and that is what I would like to see with her in Beyond the Spider-Verse. I love Lady Spider. She comes from a turn-of-the-century reality known as Earth 803. Her father, I believe, was an inventor, and Lady Spider herself became one too, building her own costume complete with spider harness and also web shooters. Honestly, this is a character I have wanted to cosplay for some time. I'm gonna do it eventually. I don't know how that harness is gonna happen, but I'll figure out a way. I just love her whole look. Lady Spider, while being an alternate version of Spider-Man, is also technically an alternate version of Aunt May somewhat too. Her civilian name is actually Maybelle Riley. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about Spider-Man and Spider-Man related stuff, be sure to check out our Spider-Man playlist. Number 8. Silk. How have we not had Silk yet in these films? Silk is by far one of the coolest spider alternates around, although she technically does not hail from another reality in the comics, but instead is actually from the main reality of Earth 616. So it would be interesting to see where they would place her in the animated multiverse. Silk is Cindy Moon, who actually was retconned to have been bitten by the exact same radioactive spider as Peter Parker, granting her similar abilities to him and initially creating a very strong bond between the two characters. Number 7. Aranya. Anya Corazon is always an interesting one for me because she is quite unique in regards to her role in the Spider-Verse and her origin and her power set, or at least she used to be. In the comics, she was initially one of the more important characters when it came to the Spider-Verse event, as her powers are actually based in the realm of mysticism, being given to her through a magic spider tattoo and a whole spider society, and her powers allowed her to read and understand prophetic scrolls related to the great web of life and destiny. Of course, then later her power set was changed to more reflect the standard spider hero power set in the comics, but I'm kind of hoping if we see her in the film trilogy, she'll have more of that original power set, which could be just as helpful to our heroes in the animated multiverse as it was to our heroes in the comics multiverse. Number 6. Spider-Man UK. I feel like in the comics, Spider-Man UK was kind of robbed, a little bit snubbed if you will, and now I kind of feel like in the Spider-Verse films, he's also kind of been cheated too. He is one of the main characters from the first Spider-Verse event in the comics, who dies right near the start of the second event, which continues its story, Spider-Geddon. Spider-Man UK is Billy Braddock, who is basically a combo of Spider-Man and Captain Britain, hailing from Earth 833. He was one of the first people to realize the threat of the Inheritors and bring the Spider folks of the multiverse together, forming the Spider Army in the first comic book event. So he's kind of like what 2099 Spider-Man has become in terms of the animated multiverse. Billy also ended up going on to lead the Web Warriors at the end of the Spider-Verse comic book event, with Loom World becoming his new home base as his home reality had actually been destroyed. Sad. Number 5. Spider-Man. Spider-Man is literally one of my all-time favorites. Also, yes, this list is mostly a list of my favorite alternate Spider people that I feel like I need to see in Beyond the Spider-Verse. And I can't believe we haven't gotten Spider-Man yet as a main character. I mean, not a main character, but I definitely would have thought we'd have gotten something involving Spider-Man in regards to sort of the supporting characters that are around, I would say, our two main co-stars, which have ended up being Miles and Gwen. Like the roles that Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Ham, Spider-Ham, Spider-Man, and Penny Parker's Speeder played in the first part of the trilogy, Into the Spider-Verse. Or, you know, if you prefer, Penny Parker's SP//DR. Now granted, we did get a May Parker in the first movie, but she was the aunt of Earth 1610's Peter Parker, who tragically dies right near the beginning. Peter does, not Aunt May. That May Parker was awesome, but I still want to see Aunt May suit up as Spider-Man, who in her reality, which originated in a what-if story, became a spider-themed hero in Peter's place, with May as the hero there and Peter actually providing sort of hero support. Number 4. Kane Parker. Kane Parker is a character that I cannot believe we missed out on having to this point in the series. I mean, how could we have Ben Reilly without Kane Parker? I gotta say, I hope we get Kane and beyond, and I hope he too is voiced by Andy Samberg, who apparently voices Ben Reilly, which is crazy to me. I love it. He did a ridiculously good job with voicing the most dramatic and moody Ben Reilly. I mean, if that's what he's working with for Ben, just imagine what he could do with Kane, who is honestly even more moody in general, not just in terms of his 90s appearances either. For those who don't know Kane, he was the first clone that the Jackal made of Spider-Man. This attempt was also kind of a wash, which meant initially that Kane was actually deteriorating, suffering both mentally and physically as a result. Don't worry though, because later Kane would be cured and now he lives on without fear of expiring after a certain length of time, as so many other clones in Spider-Man comics have tended to do. Most cases, clones have like a very short lifespan. Number 3. Spinneret. While not a straight up alternate version of Spider-Man, Spinneret is Mary Jane with powers who fights against crime alongside her husband and daughter in the Renew Your Vows reality. I love this world where Peter and MJ were actually allowed to grow up, settle down, have kids. I mean, we also have that courtesy of the reality known as Earth 982, but this world is more grounded in the modern day, and kind of feels like a world where in modern comics, Peter and MJ just, you know, continued on with their love story and never had their marriage erased. In fact, that's exactly what it is. Renew Your Vows was a reality created during the 2015 Secret Wars event, where a few things differed. Chiefly for Peter and MJ that there was no civil war, which meant that they never had to give up their marriage to save Aunt May. While their daughter would get powers, Peter made MJ a suit to wear that basically siphons off some of his power to her, so that she can join them in the fight as the vigilante Spinneret. Number 2. Spiderling. Like her mom and her dad, Spiderling is also a hero. If you haven't guessed yet, we're talking about Peter and MJ's daughter from the reality of Earth 18119. The Renew Your Vows universe. Here, Spiderling is Anna May Parker, named after both MJ's and Peter's aunts. Anna May's nickname is not Mayday, but instead is Annie. And Annie actually wasn't their only daughter that they had. In this reality, they also had another daughter who was named May, presumably would have been this universe's Mayday, but May tragically was lost to them before Annie was ever born. As Spiderling, Annie has powers similar to her father's, which we also know he shares with her mother when they're both suited up, but her spider sense is actually more powerful than her dad's, giving her the ability to have visions of future events before they happen. She also has a strong connection to the Web of Life and Destiny as the pattern maker, allowing her to manipulate the web to forge stronger connections and even use it to make mystical armor. Number 1. Superior Spider-Man. I mean, come on. Tell me you don't want to see Superior Spider-Man at some point in this universe. Definitely would love to see him as like one of the supporting characters here. Doc Ock is a character that I love from the comics, and his time as Spider-Man is straight up iconic and one of the most interesting Spider-Man stories we've had in the modern day. Now the only thing for Beyond the Spider-Verse is that we don't know too much yet about Dr. Octopus in this reality, but that doesn't mean we couldn't get to know him and also see his own alternate self as Spider-Man incorporated into the story in this final part of the trilogy. I mean, Superior Spider-Man was a pretty key figure when it came to both the Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon comic book events, so I think that makes sense. Also, we all know who Doc Ock is, so I don't think they really have to do a lot of exposition. Just have to be like, this is Doc Ock, he's got octopus arms, he's got a story, anyways, in this universe he's Spider-Man. There, I wrote it. It's done. Put it in. Number 10. Kraven the Spider Hunter. We know on Earth 8 there is a Spider Woman who happens to resemble Kraven somewhat, but did you know that on Earth 31 there actually is a Sergei Kravinoff who simply is Spider-Man? Yep, Kraven is known as Hunter Spider, who after being exposed to a giant spider's spider venom while hunting a lion in Zimbabwe, became himself a spider-themed hero. Hunter Spider specifically focuses on hunting spider-themed villains in New York City. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, if you love it when we talk about alternate spider folks, be sure to let us know by clicking that subscribe button. I know there's a bunch of you out there that aren't subscribed, and if that's who you are, maybe subscribe. It's a nice thing to do. Helps us out. Number 9. Spider. Spider. Penny Parker's story is really just strange. I mean, even her superhero name is pretty strange. SP//DR. Penny Parker hails from the reality of Earth 14512. Here she pilots a mech that is connected to her through her genes and a spider bite. The spider bite connects her to the suit, as the spider that bit her actually makes up half of the mech suit known as Spider's CPU. In her alternate reality, she also has a rival in Addie Brock, who ends up as the pilot of the mech suit known as Venom, or as it's spelled there, VEN #M, or £, if you prefer. Penny is weird in the sense that a lot of her story, while still echoing the canon, feels like such a fresh take on the origin of Spider-Man, which is also why I love it. Number 8. The Spider. On Earth 15, Spider-Man is the exact opposite of a hero. He is a villain, a criminal, and one of the most extreme kinds of criminals, a serial killer. He merged with a symbiote that is basically Carnage to become the Spider. His sense of humor is extremely dark, and he actually takes joy in hurting others. Despite joining the Timebreakers, the Spider later tries to take over multiple different universes and ends up being killed during his attempt. So while he is really creepy and disturbing, at least he's gone now. Or at least he's gone for now. The Spider was one of the characters and teammates that appeared in Exiles, making his first appearance in the 2001 Exiles series in issue number 12, but eventually was killed in issue number 44. While we know about Peter Parker and his role as the Spider on Earth 15 as a serial killer with a symbiotic suit, we don't really know anything else about his home reality, so yeah, I wonder if all the other heroes are also villains there. Number 7. Spider Bite. I am so happy that I get to talk about Spider Bite. She was actually my favorite spider-themed hero to appear in the Vault of Spiders comic, and she's also definitely a weirdo in the best of ways. She hails from a world where people actually spend most of their time online as avatars, which is pretty weird. Spider Bite is actually Margot's avatar, or one of them, rather, that she wears in the digital space. She fights to protect people in cyberspace by donning her Spider Bite persona and apprehending cyber criminals. Seriously though, how cool would it be if we actually had a hero like this on, the internet, on cyberspace? Although this might seem like a strange reality to some, the cool thing about Spider Bite is it kind of feels like she could exist in our own future. I mean, already people spend a lot of time online, and we have things like VR, Oculus, and even digital land, so this could very well be our own future. Honestly, we maybe need some vigilantes on the internet. Number 6. Doppelganger. Doppelganger is known for being one of the most vicious and evil spider people out there. He was actually created initially during the Infinity War event by the evil version of Adam Warlock, known as Magus. During that event, many different heroes had to fight against their evil alternate selves, or fight against the evil alternate versions of fellow heroes and friends. Doppelganger was one of these, but despite being killed during Infinity War, he still managed to reappear again in the comics, returning in Maximum Carnage and wreaking havoc every time he manages to pretty much pop up, which happens actually surprisingly often when you consider how many times in different ways he's actually died over the years, but he's still kicking. Number 5. Ghost Spider. I feel like some people are going to be offended by some of the spider folks I'm calling weird on this list, but I would like to take this time to remind you that weird doesn't have to be a bad thing. In fact, weird to me usually tends to be a good thing. Usually, weird to me just means something that is extreme or unique in some way. Something that stands out. And standing out, honestly, it can be quite a good thing. In fact, in Spider-Gwen or Ghost Spider's case, I feel like her being weird is a big part of the reason why I love her character, and why I think a lot of us love her character. In almost every other universe, Gwen Stacy tragically dies, and is actually a huge part of a staple canon event for most Peter Parkers or Spider-Men out there. But in her home reality of Earth 65, things were different. Instead of her dying, it's Peter who becomes the Lizard, and he dies. And this is surprisingly rare. There are very few realities where Gwen even gets to stay alive. Primarily, I can only think of House of M and Gwenpool's home reality off the top of my head. So in the sense of standing out, Ghost Spider truly is a lovable weirdo, as the girl that not only lived, but herself also becomes a spider-themed hero. Pretty cool. Number 4. Japanese Spider-Man, or Spider-Man, as he is also sometimes known. Japanese Spider-Man is very different from the one we know in North America. In Japan, Spider-Man actually had his own TV show, but with that he also got a radically different backstory. It's really wild and really great. If you think you know Spider-Man, you likely will be very surprised by this version of Spider-Man. Spider-Man here is Takayuya Yamashiro, who got his spider-like abilities from a dying alien. Along with these abilities, he was also given Leopardon, a giant robot mech spaceship. Yep. The alien who gave him his abilities is named Garia, and actually hails from another world known as Planet Spider. Prior to becoming the hero Spider-Man, and even after, Yamashiro was known for being a talented motocross racer. Also, the intro for the 1970s show is still one of my all-time favorite intros I've ever probably heard in the existence of television intros, and I honestly still think it slaps today. Number 3. Bagman. Bagman is an interesting character. Although many of us consider him to be an alternate thanks to the costume's appearance in events like the Spider-Verse and properties like Marvel's Spider-Man, where this is one of the costumes you can roam around the city in the comics, this was only really a moment in Peter's life, at least in the main continuity of Earth 616. Bagman's origin come from the time when Peter went to Reed Richards for help with his black costume, which it turned out was actually the symbiote Venom, and after being separated from the Venom symbiote, used this outfit as a temporary replacement costume. It was made up of a fantastic suit loaned to him from Johnny Storm's The Human Torch, and a paper bag, which had 2 holes cut out for eyes that he would wear over his head. Bagman's appearance throughout Spider-Verse content, however, implies that somewhere out there exists a world where Spider-Man never stopped wearing the Bagman outfit. Although, we've never visited that world, but I would love to. At least I don't think we have. Number 2. Miles Morales Animated Spider-Verse Trilogy. The Miles Morales of Into the Spider-Verse has a somewhat different origin story, as we learn in the latest film in the trilogy, Across the Spider-Verse. Mild, I would say pretty mild, spoilers ahead for those who have yet to see the film, as that's the Miles we are going to be focusing on here. So we're not focusing on comic book 1610, we're going to be focusing on animated universe Miles from Earth 1610. The one from Sony's animated multiverse, if you will. But at the same time, I'm going to try and keep this more general and avoid getting too specific, so hopefully this will be quite a mild spoiler if you want to listen that won't ruin the movie for you at all. At least that's what I'm hoping. Hope I'm not ruining the movie for anyone. That would make me sad. And Across the Spider-Verse, we learn that Miles' origin is actually unique in the sense that it connects him to another reality. This is interesting and unique for his origin story and makes him more of a standout or odd, weird, you might say, character when it comes to the fact that technically he could be considered the Spider-Man of a different reality than his native one of Earth 1610. I found that very interesting, and I think it makes him kinda weird, in a great way. In an intriguing way. Number 1. Bagman. If you thought Bagman was weird, wait till I tell you about Bagman. Yep, you heard that right. You remember Spider-Man? If you aren't familiar with her, a quick recap for you. She is an alternate reality spider-themed hero where instead of Peter Parker ending up with spider-like powers and abilities after being bitten by a radioactive spider, May Parker, his aunt, receives them instead after she was bitten while delivering a forgotten lunch to Peter while he was on a field trip at school. In this reality, May Parker is the hero known as Spider-Man, with Peter and Ben being part of her crime-fighting team and offering her support in terms of tech know-how and heart. Bagman appears as one of the alternates in the 2019 Spider-Verse comic in issue number 2 that Spider-Man reached out to get help from, reaching across the multiverse in order to defeat an evil alternate version of herself who was actually Carnage, an alternate Carnage, and an alternate May Parker. Number 10. Exiles Silver Surfer. When it comes to the exploration of the multiverse via the Exiles comic, one of the alternates we run into happens to be one of Norrin Radd. He hails from the reality of Earth 552. Here, Norrin Radd's homeworld of Zenn-La was destroyed as a result of his own doing. Radd here is a military scientist whose invention resulted in the destruction of Zenn-La. Feeling awful for what he has wrought, he decides to serve as a herald Herald of Galactus, who in this universe is actually known not as a world devourer, but instead as a world restorer. Rad hopes that in serving Galactus, his world may someday be restored. However, when Galactus refuses to do so, saying that he will instead only restore worlds destroyed by the Blight, this causes Norrin to turn on him. In the end, Silver Surfer, while powerful, would be no match for Galactus and would die as a result of underestimating his new Power Cosmic imbued herald, Sabretooth. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at the channel, if you love Silver Surfer, be sure to show us that you love us by clicking that thumbs up. Number 9. Cosmic Carnage. Cosmic Carnage was strong enough to fight against multiple heroes and even teams of heroes from Earth at once and win. He is the result of what happens in the 1989 series What If, in issue number 108. Here we see what would happen if Carnage ended up bonding with the Silver Surfer. The answer is a whole lot of mayhem, chaos, and destruction. Pretty much what you would think would happen. In the end, to defeat Cosmic Carnage, it was up to Norrin himself. And after being temporarily weakened by Firestar's attack, Norrin gains enough control over the symbiote that he is able to fly it into the sun alongside him, destroying both it and himself. Number 8. Silver Searcher. Silver Searcher is the Ultimate Comics version of the character. Rad is initially known as the Silver Searcher and later becomes known as the Silver Surfer in this version of his tale. Silver Searcher is actually the herald of Zenla's ruler, Revka Tamerlun Edifax Skyros III. Reed Richards accidentally summoned the Silver Searcher to Earth in the reality of 1610 after mistaking him for a star. Now this is likely because Silver Searcher is actually powered similarly to a star, possessing a core that is in essence identical to one, so apparently it's an easy mistake to make. Silver Searcher initially claimed that his master would save the planet Earth and make everyone happy, but in reality this man, also known as Psycho Man, enslaved the planet. In fact, it turned out that Norrin Rad here was banished from Zenla for freeing them from Revka's control. In the end, Rad would also help the Fantastic Four to fight back against his master, Psycho Man. Number 7. Silver Surfer and the Silver Surfers. Silver Surfer and the Silver Surfers is a team of Silver Surfers, evidently. They hail from the 2022 comic Silver Surfer Rebirth, and while we don't really know that much about them in regards to where they came from, it's believed that their looks are inspired by alternate designs for the main member of their team, Earth 616's Silver Surfer. It also turns out that this group of surfers is even more powerful together, as all of their power cosmic is slightly differently attuned, making them a fearsome force for anyone to go up against. Number 6. The Keeper. The Keeper is the name for Norrin Rad on the Earth of 691, the same reality that belongs to the Guardians of the Galaxy from the 31st century. Here Norrin became the protector of the universe, working for Eon and being granted the quantum bands. Like on Earth 616, before this he was originally Galactus' herald, but would end up getting a pardon from his duties. Later, after the destruction of Zenla, Norrin would blame Galactus for all the ills that had befallen him and his homeworld. This was when he would attempt to destroy Galactus once and for all, but would lose. However, he would be saved from being lost completely as a result of this fight by the Watcher Aeron. He would be removed from the universe and during this time would train, becoming more skilled with his quantum bands and finding a way to channel the power cosmic despite Galactus seemingly removing its power from him. When Norrin returned, it would be as the Keeper, and he would nearly destroy Galactus before accepting his place at the World Devourer's side, now not as his herald, but as his equal. Number 5. Silver Racer. Silver Racer is an interesting combo character that comes to us from the pages of Amalgam Comics. Amalgam Comics, for those that don't know, is sort of the combination of DC and Marvel working together to bring us amalgam things. This character is also known as Willie Lincoln and comes to us from the first issue of Challengers of the Fantastic. He is a crossover character between the big two, combining DC's Black Racer, Willie Walker, and Marvel's Silver Surfer, Norrin Rad. Both of these characters become the embodiment of something greater than they are, so to me that combo makes a lot of sense. With Norrin becoming a herald of Galactus who initially struggles to remember his previous life, and Willie Walker becoming the embodiment of death for the new gods as the Black Racer. Considering that his character also has a combination of both characters' powers, he is pretty wildly powerful compared to some of the others that are on our list. Number 4. Silver Galactus. This isn't an editorial name, but more a name I kinda just made up myself for this version of the Silver Surfer. I think it's pretty fitting. In the MC2 reality of Earth 982, where heroes and villains are actually permitted to to grow up, age, and some of them even settle down and have kids, Silver Surfer comes to stop Galactus when he attempts to remake the universe, needing of course to destroy it first. I mean, gotta destroy it, then build it back up. Silver Surfer and the heroes of Earth are successful in stopping him, but during the conflict an explosion occurs. The energy of this explosion is so great that it merges the beings of Galactus and Silver Surfer together. This transformed the World Devourer from a being of destruction to one of creation, and the new Silver Galactus sets out to repair damaged worlds and build new ones, pledging to be a guardian of life. Number 3. Dark Surfer. Dark Surfer comes to us from the Superhero Squad show, which is made with characters whose designs are based on the Hasbro action figure line. The show was actually made to intentionally be a self-aware parody for Marvel characters. Silver Surfer is one of the superhero team members featured in it, but he later becomes corrupted by the Infinity Gems after stealing the Infinity Gauntlet from Thanos, and then he kind of becomes basically the main antagonist of the show. This version of the character, the Corrupted One, becomes powerful enough to threaten the very existence of the universe. Dark Surfer not only wields the gauntlet, which is extremely powerful, but also wields the Infinity Sword. Fortunately, his friends manage to defeat him in the end by destroying these items, thereby purifying the Dark Surfer and turning him back into the Silver Surfer. Number 2. The Fallen One. The Fallen One is one of my favorite all-time Silver Surfer alternates. He hails from a Thanos comic, surprisingly, which might seem kind of weird, but I guess if you know Silver Surfer and his history with Thanos, it's not super weird. But considering there's lots of Silver Surfer titles out there, it's an interesting thing. In an alternate reality where Thanos wins, Norrin Radd is one of the last to stand against him, if not really the last. This is what Norrin would be like were he not to have Galactus around to call the shots for him. In fact, Galactus was killed during a final stand against Thanos, but Norrin remained. He would become worthy of Mjolnir in addition to the power cosmic, and his body would become made of dark matter, turning dark instead of silver. The Fallen One was so powerful, he defeated Cosmic Ghost Rider with pretty much one hit, something that even King Thanos said he was unable to do. Number 1. What if the Silver Surfer possessed the Infinity Gauntlet? This version of Silver Surfer hails from the reality categorized as Earth 93549. He is first seen in the 1989 What If series in issue number 49. Here, Silver Surfer ends up taking for himself the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, stealing it from Thanos during the Infinity Gauntlet story, as he failed to do in the main continuity. With the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, Silver Surfer becomes powerful enough to rule the whole universe. Despite others' cries for him to relent and relinquish the gauntlet, Norrin keeps it. Initially things go well, but when he begins to use his power to simply erase those who refuse to bow to him, he himself, despite his usually kind and compassionate heart, also becomes corrupted by its power. It is only through his love of Shala Bal that he is able to see what he has truly become, and in the end destroys the gauntlet and chooses to live out the rest of his days as immortal with Shala instead. Number 10. Spiders-Man. If you were wondering if I misspoke there, no I did not. Spiders-Man is one of my favorite alternates out there actually because, well, he's just so creepy. He's definitely a weirdo because he is literally made out of spiders. Ugh. This version of Peter Parker, instead of being bit by a radioactive spider, actually fell into basically like a vat of experimental spiders. As a result, he was consumed by them, and his consciousness manifested within them. Although the real Peter Parker was actually dead and gone, being completely devoured, his mind lived on in the spiders who were connected by his consciousness and came together to create basically a humanoid form. This version of Spider-Man really can never reveal his secret identity, as doing so would reveal that he's actually not a person at all, but just a bunch of spiders all huddled together in the shape of a man. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love when we talk about Spider-Man content, I love talking about Spider-Man and all of the Spider-Verse stuff, be sure to check out our Spider-Man playlist. We've got a lot more content over there for you. Number 9. Webslinger. I love this alternate Spider-Man. While odd, I'd also say he's a pretty cool variant as well. This alternate version of Spider-Man hails from the Wild Wild West. Patrick O'Hara hails from the alternate reality of Earth 31913. He was a traveler who would show off his shooting skills in shows, giving gun presentations. Doc Morbius also traveled along with him. While Patrick would show off his shooting skills along the road, Morbius would sell his elixir. One day the elixir doused a radioactive spider, and after that spider bit Patrick, he noticed he now had spider-like abilities and powers. Tragically, Morbius began to drink his elixir, which actually turned him into a vampire, forcing the Webslinger to track down his once old friend and defeat him. That's what you do to vampires, especially when they're being all creepy and drinking people's blood. Number 8. Spider-Punk. Spider-Punk is a strange one, but is also another favorite of mine from the Spider-Verse. Spider-Punk seems to be one of the alternate versions of Spider-Man that we'll see appearing in Across the Spider-Verse. This version of Spider-Man is not Peter Parker, but instead Hobie Brown, or Hobbert Brown. In this reality, Hobie Brown is a punk rocker who not only possesses spider-like abilities, but also the power of rock. In fact, at one point he actually used his music skills to defeat an alternate version of Venom, cranking up the volume and using an army of amps. Now of course this Venom was very different, but still, it's a super cool story. I love it. Number 7. Superior Spider-Man. What if one of Spider-Man's greatest foes became Spider-Man himself? Well, we know what happens because this actually has happened. Actually a few times in the comics. Now, one of the most memorable and strangest occurrences of this was when Spider-Man actually traded bodies with Dr. Octopus. You know, I've short formed that name so much in recent years that it actually feels weird to say his whole supervillain title name now, Dr. Octopus. Why does that feel so weird? Otto at the time was on his deathbed, and in an attempt to save his mind and preserve it, managed to trick Peter into swapping bodies with him. Initially, Doc Ock just wanted to use Peter's younger body to save himself, and actually had no interest in taking Peter's place. However, as Peter in Otto's body lay on now his deathbed, because they'd swapped bodies and he was in Otto's failing body, he managed to convince Otto that the world needed Spider-Man, and to take up the mantle and continue what Peter had started when he became Spider-Man years ago. Otto surprised us all by actually agreeing, vowing to act as a hero, and to even do better than Peter had, dubbing himself Superior Spider-Man, which honestly that last part, not so surprising for Otto Octavius. Although ultimately Otto wouldn't necessarily do better, he wouldn't necessarily be a better Spider-Man, some very interesting things came out of this massive storyline. And there are still some people that argue that Superior Spider-Man is better, so I mean, I guess that's for you, the reader, to decide. Number 6. Spider-Boy. What happens when you take Connor Kent's Superboy and mix him with Peter Parker's Spider-Man? You get Spider-Boy. Spider-Boy is one of those rare and amazing creations that came out of the days of Amalgam Comics. For those who are unfamiliar with Amalgam Comics, it was a magical joint comic line that existed between both DC Comics and Marvel Comics. These two publishers came together to combine their worlds, mashing up heroes and stories to give us new characters who were inspired by their roster of superheroes and supervillains from each of their unique multiverses. Spider-Boy as such is one of those characters. Spider-Boy was a clone who was created by Project Cadmus to be a duplicate of the Amalgam Universe's Super Soldier, but with the added ability to manipulate gravity. Peter Parker was the scientist who was in charge of creating this clone, but he died during the process after his project was basically sabotaged. As a result, the clone created was much younger than intended. He was named Pete after his creator by General Thaddeus Ross, who was overseeing this project. Unfortunately, Ross, who Pete came to know as his Uncle Jen, was killed by a mugger. As a result, Pete lamented his young age as this had made the mugger dismiss him and focus on Ross. Spider-Boy vowed from that day on to become undismissible, so all criminals would focus on him, instead of innocent bystanders. Number 5. Spider-Man. Another one of my favorite alternate spider weirdos is Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man spun out of a what-if story, which aimed to answer the question, what if Aunt May had been bitten by a radioactive spider? The question we were all, I'm sure, itching to know the answer to at the time. This first happened to May in issue number 23 of the 1977 What If series. May was basically bringing Peter his lunch, which he had forgotten at home, when she was the one who ended up being bitten by the radioactive spider in his place. In May's reality, both Peter and Ben are still alive and well and actually act as her allies, while she fights to protect New York and stop criminals in their tracks. Kinda like a cute little family team. I love it. Number 4. Patton Parnell. Patton Parnell is one of my favorite alternate versions of Spider-Man. If you thought Spider-Man was creepy, wait till you meet this guy. Patton Parnell is the Spider-Man of Earth 51412. In this reality, Patton stands in for Peter, but instead of being a good guy, he's kinda just a creepy guy who enjoys making ants burn on the sidewalk with a magnifying glass as part of his experiments. However, Patton is likely a sadistic and creepy person because he actually has a pretty rough home life, often being mistreated by his Uncle Ted. In the end, when he receives his powers, they turn him into into a monstrous, more evil spider-like creature, who ends up mutating into something more monster than man. This version of Spider-Man has only ever made his first and last appearance in Edge of Spider-Verse issue number 4 from 2014, though honestly, I would love to see more versions of Patton popping up around the world. It's pretty cool. Number 3. Spider-Ham. This version of Spider-Man is actually a web-slinging cartoon pig. Spider-Ham hails from a reality that is similar to the Toontown we see in the classic film Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Physics aren't really the same as our world, but instead are reimagined to be kinda wacky like how they are in classic cartoons. I don't know about you, but to me, this has always made Spider-Ham not only seem like one of the weirdest variants around, but also kind of one of the most powerful just because of that. Because I feel like if you have toon physics, like watch out. Spider-Ham's civilian name is Peter Porker, and he hails from the reality designated number 8311. In Spider-Ham's origin story, he actually started out as a spider, but after being bitten by a radioactive sort of rage-fueled pig named May Porker, who actually was a scientist simply trying to try out an atomic-powered hairdryer at the time, which went awry and kind of put her into a fit of rage, he was transformed into a pig. This is the true story. Despite being turned into a pig, he still kept all of his spider-like abilities and powers, hence Spider-Ham. Number 2. Widow, aka Spider-Horse. Although if you look up Spider-Horse on Google, you might actually get a different character before you get Widow. But editorial speaking, Spider-Horse is still a name that is used with this character, so I'm still mentioning it here because I still think it's relevant, and I like saying Spider-Horse. Remember when I was telling you about web-slinger Patrick O'Hara living in the Wild Wild West times? Well, he's not the only one who receives spider-like abilities. No, no, no. His horse was also bitten by the same elixir-doused radioactive spider. And guess what? He got powers too. Widow is Patrick O'Hara's loyal steed, who also became a spider-like hero and even was recruited alongside Web-Slinger to join the Web Warriors and fight against the Inheritors during the Spider-Verse event. Spider-Horse is also one of the Spider-Man variants we see or will see in Across the Spider-Verse. Fun facts. At least it seems like we'll see him. He's in the trailer, so I feel like he's gonna be in there. Number 1. Spidey Super Stories. I love this one. The Electric Company actually brought us the first ever live action depiction of Spider-Man, if you can believe that, with their Spidey Super Stories skits. In these skits, Spider-Man was portrayed by puppeteer and dancer Danny Seagren. This version of Spider-Man never spoke, but instead acted out his intentions that were communicated by a narrator who told the story. Fun fact, Morgan Freeman was actually one of the actors who had narrating credits for these skits, so if you go back and listen to some of them, you might hear his very familiar voice. He was a member of the Electric Company cast, so that's why you will hear that. In these stories, Spider-Man took on villains like Dr. Fly and Spoiler. Spoiler was all about ruining things for folks, hence his name, Spoiler. He likes to spoil things. Dr. Fly, on the other hand, was a half-human, half-mutant who wanted to transform everyone on the planet into a mutant like he was. All of these villains were so strange and so great, and you should go back and watch some of these skits because they're pretty fantastic.
Number 10. Sideburn the Regenerating Planet. When Galactica, the daughter of Galactus, is looking for her next meal in issue 1 of her self-titled comic, she finds Earth, a lovely little snack. But while looking at her dinner option, she comes upon Wolverine. Realizing his mutant regenerative abilities, she formulates an idea of using a bit of his harvested DNA with a bit of celestial power to create Sideburn the Regenerating Planet, a planet-sized Galactus meal that would grow back after each feasting. The perfect unlimited food source that would give her billions of years of meals. Unfortunately, she just as quickly realizes that a planet made up of Canadian mutant DNA like this would be highly unstable. Unfortunate, because I'd love to see this guy floating through the galaxy of the regular Marvel universe.
Number 9. Cancerous Professor X. In the alternate universe of Earth 10,011, otherwise known as the Cancerverse, death was defeated by life and the ancient eldritch beings known as the Many-Angled One. The heroes of this Earth began to worship the Many-Angled Ones, who transformed the heroes, granting them new powers, but also corrupting and mutating them due to the Many-Angled One's demonic natures. One of the consequences of this was that many of the heroes became deformed by cancerous tumors running amok. Although many of the X-Men were affected, such as Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Storm, the most terrifying of these beings was Professor X, who developed a massive cranium as well as multiple glowing red eyes. Now, Professor X can be pretty creepy at the best of times, but this is taking it to a whole other level.
Number 8. Franken Castle. After he was taken out by Daken on orders from Norman Osborn during the Dark Reign event, Frank Castle, yes, the Punisher, was revived by the Legion of Monsters as an undead zombie-like monster known as Franken Castle. The Legion resurrected Frank to recruit him in their fight against the villain known as Hellsguard, who was systematically killing off monsters using samurai-like assassins. Although he originally refused, Frank got involved after seeing innocent child monsters being dispatched as well, and that is not something Frank is willing to abide. He went on to slay hordes of Hellsguard's men. It's honestly an incredibly interesting moment in Frank Castle's history, and it got this version of Frank moved to Earth 666. He also nearly enacted revenge against Daken, being stopped by Wolverine before he was returned to his human form through the Bloodstone.
Number 7. Zombie Scarlet Witch. On Earth 2149, things were relatively similar to Earth 616 until one day, a traveler from an alternate dimension showed up at Avengers Mansion, warning of the Earth's impending doom at the hands of an army of the dead. Who was this interdimensional traveler? None other than the groovy Ash Williams from the Evil Dead franchise. The heroes ignore this strange and irritating man, but soon after they discover that the threat is real and they are bitten by the zombie horde and transformed into the living dead. Ash eventually teams up with Earth's Scarlet Witch and Dazzler to try and find the Book of the Dead and save the Earth, but Wanda was eventually bitten by a zombified Punisher and turned into a zombie herself. Now, in the zombie universe, there are plenty of zombie heroes to choose from, such as Captain America, Spider-Man, and even Howard the Duck. But for this list, we decided to go with Scarlet Witch, as her incredible powers make her a terrifying force to be reckoned with under the best of circumstances. But the idea of all that power having an insatiable taste for human flesh is even worse.
Number 6. Ice Giant Thor. In What If Thor in 2018, we got the story of what if Thor was raised by frost giants. Laufey, the king of the frost giants, defeats Odin in their battle so long ago, and just as Odin took the infant Loki, Laufey takes the kid Thor and raises him as his own. Loki is obviously here as well, and like usual, they form a pretty tight bond as adoptive brothers. Unfortunately, due to Thor's strength and skill in battle, not to mention his fondness for summoning the power of lightning, he is praised among the frost giants and by Laufey himself, who begins to completely forget Loki, his actual true son. Instead, Loki finds the captured Freya in the dungeons and she teaches him how to use magic. Loki eventually busts her out of prison and together they attempt to escape to Midgard. They go to the ruins of Asgard and attempt to repair the Rainbow Bridge until Thor and Laufey show up. Loki ends the life of his father while Thor unknowingly ends his mother with a blast from his giant ice hammer, Ice Crusher. Thor almost takes out his brother as well, but at the last minute, he lets him go. We don't know what happens next, only that Loki went to Midgard, had kids and a family, and apparently became a hero. It actually ends on a rather sweet note.
Number 5. Vampire Daredevil. When Magneto's ultimatum wave devastated New York in the Ultimate Universe, one of the victims of the flood was the original Daredevil, Matt Murdock. Feeling that Hell's Kitchen needed its champion, Murdock's old mentor, Stick, sought out Raymond Connor to become Matt's replacement. Like Matt, Raymond was blinded in an accident and developed similar abilities. After being trained by Stick, Raymond took on the Daredevil mantle, using a yellow and red variation of Matt's red costume. This new hero's career was cut extremely short when he was bitten by a vampire version of the Nerd Hulk. This turned the new Daredevil into a terrifying and effective vampire, even managing to bite Captain America and defeat Blade in combat. Thankfully, before he could land the killing blow, he was teleported to Iran, where he perished in the sun.
Number 4. Steel Corpse. In Marvel's Age of X universe, the X-Men never existed to represent mutants, and as a result, the mutant population had become the ultimate enemy. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes by General Frank Castle and led by Captain America to hunt down this resistance of mutants. mutants. Among the members of this team was a version of Iron Man named Steel Corpse. This Iron Man had become infected by a technological virus that fused him with his armor. Inside the armor, Iron Man has slowly been digested by the suit over the decades since he was trapped inside. The worst part is that this group of Avengers eventually decided that they weren't going to attack the mutants who were just trying to survive. So the government takes control of Steel Corpse and forces the suit to attack. It's twisted, it's sick, and it's absolutely terrifying to imagine being slowly consumed by a suit of armor you can literally never escape.
Number 3. The Maker. Despite having his flaws, Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four is an important and heroic figure in the Marvel Universe. Despite his heroics, we did witness a spectacular fall from grace for Reed in the Ultimate Comics universe, otherwise known as Earth 1610. In this universe, Magneto created a doomsday weapon called the Ultimatum Wave, which caused a tidal wave that killed thousands of people. This, combined with the stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal, caused Reed to snap and blow up his childhood home to fake his death, killing his family in the process. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes. He was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. Reed returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect. He killed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power and used antimatter to attack Washington, D.C., killing POTUS, his cabinet, and all of Congress. The Maker went on to do a lot of twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, proving that if not kept in check by a strong moral compass, Mr. Fantastic's amazing mind can be the ultimate source of terror.
Number 2. Space Punisher Hulk. Space Punisher Hulk has only appeared in 2 comic books, but despite that, he has shown that he is completely terrifying. For starters, he is a completely separate entity from Bruce Banner, whose body is literally trapped inside Space Punisher Hulk. This means that nothing that happens to Bruce Banner affects the Hulk. Space Punisher Hulk, while having all the powers of the Hulk, also has an extra set of arms and is quite a bit taller. He is described as a destructive killing machine, well known for destroying spaceships, defeating the Fantastic Four, ripping off the Thing's hand and tying up Mr. Fantastic in a knot in the process. He has taken out Doc Samson with his own hair, bit straight through Sabretooth, and de-lifed Deadpool by literally tearing off his head, which shouldn't actually work, but I digress. He defeated and ended the lives of 6 Watchers single-handedly, he broke the leader's back in combat, and he also ripped out Bruce Banner from his own chest. He is virtually invulnerable, seemingly indestructible and invincible. He can move faster than light and pass through barriers of existence and reality. The Hulk is scary on a regular day. Space Punisher Hulk? No thanks, I'm good.
Number 1. Spider-Man. On Earth 11,580, Peter Parker was taking a tour of a lab that was conducting radiation experiments on a colony of spiders. Peter fell into the spider habitat and was promptly devoured by the spiders. In an odd twist of fate not dissimilar to the villain Swarm, the spiders absorbed Peter's consciousness and became a hive mind that formed together to masquerade as a human and fight crime, thus becoming Spider-Man. Spider-Man fought crime for a time, but soon developed a taste for human flesh. The spiders managed to hide this for a time and were recruited by the superior Spider-Man in his multiversal quest to defeat the villainous Inheritors. He eventually betrayed Otto by joining forces with the Norman Osborn Spider-Man of Earth 44,145 to try and destroy the Web of Life. This plan failed, but Spider-Man did manage to spread his spiders across the multiverse, giving them a foothold in every different reality.
Coming in at number 10, 1602. In this alternate Earth, or alternate timeline, Magneto is known as Enrique, or the Grand Inquisitor. He was born Jewish in a Venice ghetto, but was taken in by a Christian priest and baptized. The Christians later refused to let him be returned to his Jewish family, and being unable to be reunited with this family left him psychologically scarred, which I guess led him directly to become the leader of the Spanish Inquisition somehow? He was ordered to execute the witch breed, or mutants to us in the modern age, but he hid those who could pass off as human. Enrique's only known followers are his children Petros and Sister Wanda, who are Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, in case you didn't make the connection. And his spy in the Vatican is the Toad. Enrique uses his position to further his needs and curry favor with the influential figures, including King James of Scotland. While Enrique is attempting to have Angel killed, the Witchbreed is rescued by Iceman and Cyclops. If you guys haven't read 1602, definitely do. It's written by frickin' Neil Gaiman. Like, come on. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you drop a like. It really helps us out as a channel and we would really appreciate it. It's on to number 9 with Age of Apocalypse Magneto. In the reality of Age of Apocalypse, Magneto leads this world's X-Men after the death of his friend Charles Xavier, at the hands of Xavier's son David, who traveled back in time hoping to kill Magneto. Magneto and the X-Men fight against the forces of this world's Apocalypse, who, without the interference of Xavier, was able to take over North America. Magneto's team is composed not only of the X-Men but also includes mutants like Sabretooth and other not so good guys. In this timeline, Magneto is married to the mutant Rogue, and together they have a son they named Charles. Magneto and this Charles are later personally captured by Apocalypse himself, though they are rescued by Rogue and the other X-Men, including Nate Gray, who raid Apocalypse's citadel in a desperate final attempt to save all of reality from Macron crystallization. The end fight between Apocalypse and Magneto in this story is so awesome, and Magneto like literally tears the celestial technology out of him. It's just super cool. Number 8, Magneto. On Earth 982, the Age of Heroes happened about 15 years earlier than on Earth 616, meaning most of the events, history, and character history associated with the heroes of Earth 616 also happened 15 years before. As such, a lot of the superheroes of the past, the ones you and I know, have either grown up, grown old, or retired, with new heroes in their place. For Magneto, he doesn't actually show up. Instead, we have a young woman who goes by the name Magneta, and who seems to have all the same powers as Magneto, even dressing similar to him as she considers him her predecessor. She started off as a hero and always spouted the heroic ideologies that Magneto followed, condemning his more negative aspects. But that didn't really seem to matter though, as she eventually went bad anyways and founded the Sisterhood of Mutants as a strike team for mutants against human oppression. Her efforts to recruit a Midtown high school student named Nucleus brought her into conflict with Spider-Girl and the X-People. Number 7, Max Eisenhart of Earth 8013. In this reality, where Charles Xavier had died in his first encounter with Lucifer, Magneto formed his Brotherhood of Evil Mutants using his children Pietro and Wanda alongside Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Angel, and Beast, who curiously wielded gauntlets that made him some very Wolverine-like claws for some reason, I don't know. These 5 youths were the original X-Men on Earth 616, which makes it really interesting to see them in this strange Magneto-led bad guy team. Together, they actually ended up successfully conquering the world. But then again, they were unable to prevent Galactus from in turn destroying that world, so... But hey, you win some, you lose some, you know? I don't know. Number 6. What if Magneto ruled all mutants? In this what if story from 1996, Magneto leads mutant kind as they float above Earth in space on a sanctuary Magneto established called Avalon. Magneto had decided to let his mutants rule themselves so that he wouldn't be a dictator to them. Unfortunately, a large group of mutants had divided themselves into 2 warring factions known as the Isolationists, who wanted to move Avalon to another star system, and the Annihilates, who wanted to go the easier route of destroying humanity and just taking the Earth for themselves. Magneto had to stop the 2 factions from fighting when they nearly destroyed Avalon. Later, after the birth of the first child on Avalon, Magneto actually manipulated events in order to unite the 2 warring factions together, but on the outside he acted as though he was done trying to get them to work together. What If number 85 from 1996 is certainly an interesting story, and you should definitely check it out. Number 5, Age of X. Max Eisenhart from Earth 11326 proved to be a master strategist and a radical leader in a fight against the human race. He was a key figure in organizing resistance movements, protests, and he was the leader of both the Brotherhood and the Acolytes. He also supplied the Mutant Liberation Front with intel and logistical support. Now, similar to his Ultimate Universe counterpart, he once attempted to reverse the Earth's magnetic poles, and he would have succeeded if it hadn't been for Tony Stark and Reed Richards, who created technology that thwarted his plans and prevented any further attempts. One of his biggest feats though would be the creation of Fortress X. Magneto, using his powers, literally stole several skyscrapers from New York City and put them together to create a mutant safe haven. It was both a show of force and a mutant rallying cry. Now, after the incursions, this version of Magneto would actually go on to play a key role in the Battleworld Red Skull Volume 2 storyline. Definitely a good read there, check it out. Number 4, Heroes Reborn. Heroes Reborn Magneto and the Mutant Force Volume 1 on Earth TRN 852 gives us a version of Magneto who set up yet another mutant sanctuary in the form of Island M, and founded and led a team known as the Mutant Force consisting of Frenzy, Jubilee, Rogue, Sabra, Mr. 1, and Mr. 2, including himself. During a mutant protest against mutant registration, a fight broke out with the Squadron Supreme of America, who are like a Marvel's Comics Justice League, if that makes sense. During the fight, Power Princess, who is basically Wonder Woman, killed Professor X and paralyzed Magneto after hitting him in the spine. Magneto, affected by the passing of Xavier, and who kind of took on his whole wheelchair thing, vowed to aid mutants against human oppression. This Magneto variation actually gets his body taken over by Cassandra Nova in a crazy twist of events, and honestly, the whole story is a wild ride from start to finish. Number 3, Ultimate Universe. Everything in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, or Earth 1610, is more extreme for better or for worse. While some fans hate this version of Magneto for being a straight up villain and not the anti-hero the character has become, it is almost impossible to deny that he does show just what Magneto is totally capable of. This version of Magneto is significantly darker and more cynical than the mainstream version, regarding all humans with utter and unwavering disdain and likening them to insects. On several occasions, he has attempted to carry out extreme genocidal plans for the human population using the noticeably larger Brotherhood of Mutants he is in control of. This Magneto has displayed enough power to defeat the Ultimates, including Thor, a literal god, twice. And he was even successfully able to reverse the magnetic poles of the Earth, resulting in the Ultimatum event that was supposed to end the Ultimate Universe, but didn't for some reason, I don't know. Number 2, Brother Mutant. If you are a comic book fan, which I hope you are considering you've made it this far in the video, I highly encourage you to check out the Exiles team if you haven't already. They are a reality hopping team of heroes and sometimes villains that go around trying to fix fractured realities. One such reality that multiple teams of specifically alternate versions of Wolverine have been trying to save would be Earth 127. This reality was one of the many that was accidentally fractured by the explorations of the Timebreakers, and has a few gender-swapped characters including Magneto and his children. On this world, the Scarlet Warlock attempted to transfer the adamantium skeleton of 127's Wolverine into his mother, Magneto, but the Warlock's hex powers inadvertently merged himself, his mother Magneto, his sister Quicksilver, and the mutant Mesmero with Wolverine, creating an entirely new and extremely powerful entity known as Brother Mutant, who sought to take over the world. And in at number 1 is Magneto from House of M. When the forces of Professor X, the Avengers, and the X-Men arrived to defeat or defend the Scarlet Witch, due to her unstable mind and powers, and the influence of her brother, she caused a white flash to go off and used her powers to change reality. Mutants were no longer the minority, free to use their powers, living as proud mutants. All the mutant heroes were now living their perfect lives. Most of the societal changes in this alternate timeline were directly thanks to the strong and successful leadership of the House of Magnus, meaning Magneto and his children. Magneto took the fight to the USA with his fellow mutants. He brought down the SHIELD helicarrier and fought a final battle against the Sentinels in Central Park, defeating them. The President of the United States was captured, and Magneto and Genosha were now the world's premier superpower, with large parts of the world under his control as king. King Eric Magnus was the most powerful individual in the world, if we don't consider the Scarlet Witch, who literally created it all. Instead of mutant oppression, humans were now being oppressed and hunted by alternate versions of Sentinels. Heroes like Luke Cage, Hawkeye, and more tried to rise up and defend the defenseless as a group called the Human Resistance Movement.
Number 10. Goose Rider. Coming from the same animal-themed alternate universe as Spider-Ham, little is known about this variant of Ghost Rider other than the fact that he is a goose. This may not seem very powerful to some of you, but anyone who has ever dealt with a Canada goose knows how truly dangerous, despicable, and vengeful they can be. The idea of one of these awful creatures also being granted the powers of Ghost Rider is a truly terrifying thing to contemplate, and worth at least the number 10 spot on this list. Number 9. Ghost Rider 2099. The Ghost Rider of the year 2099 is actually the only entry on this list that doesn't get their powers from any demonic source. Zero Cochrane is instead a young computer hacker who was murdered by a rival street gang while out on a hacking mission. In an origin story not dissimilar to Chucky from Child's Play, Zero managed to download his mind into the internet before dying. He was greeted by by a group of digital beings who sent him back in a robot body. Realizing that the robo body resembled the original Ghost Rider, Zero decided to take on the identity despite not technically being a Ghost Rider. Zero's power grid in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe actually lists his abilities as being much higher than many of the other Ghost Riders on this list, but as they are not a true Ghost Rider, I have decided to rank him pretty low. Number 8. Ghost Spider. A Peter Parker from an alternate dimension who travels the multiverse with the help of his Uncle Ben, stealing the powers of other Spider-Men in order to better defend his universe. The Amazing Spider, as he called himself, eventually kidnapped the Spider-Man of Earth 616 and brought him to his universe. When Spidey learned of his misguided alternate's plan, he managed to convince him that what he was doing was wrong. Although evil Uncle Ben tried to kill the mainstream Spider-Man, the Spider gave up his life to save the Peter of Earth 616. The Spider was brought back to life by his universe's Doctor Strange and turned into Ghost Spider. We have yet to see this version of Ghost Rider in action, but the mere idea of Spider-Man being granted the demonic powers of the Ghost Rider in addition to his spider powers sounds like a total powerhouse. Unfortunately, the lack of follow-up leaves him in the number 8 slot. Number 7. Danny Ketch. While visiting Houdini's grave, Danny Ketch and his sister were caught in the crossfire of a gang war. While hiding with his injured sister, Danny came across a motorbike with a glowing gas cap. The gas cap turned out to be a mystical amulet, which transformed him into Ghost Rider. In addition to the usual Ghost Rider powers, Danny is also able to transform into a spirit of corruption, giving him an armored appearance and giving him the ability to fight the spirits of vengeance. While he is a beloved incarnation of the character, there are other versions who are more powerful, even if they aren't as interesting of a character, which is why Danny is relatively low on the ranking. Number 6. Caleb. A Civil War era black man, Caleb was able to purchase his and his family's freedom and set up a life for himself on a farm. Aided by his friend Travis, a former Confederate soldier who Caleb had saved the life of, he was able to set up a pretty good life for himself. Unfortunately, a gang led by a man named George Regan killed Caleb and his family in a racist attack. Caleb was brought back as a Ghost Rider and teamed up with Travis to hunt down the men who had destroyed his family and get his revenge. Because of the personal nature of his mission, Caleb has a determination that makes him truly terrifying to behold. He has all of the standard Ghost Rider powers, such as the flaming skull and the penance stare, but he has also displayed powers that none of the other Ghost Riders have shown to be capable of. These include the power to travel between dimensions with the use of his Hellfire, and the ability to possess and control the corpses of his victims. Number 5. Johnny Blaze. Johnny Blaze is a motorcycle stuntman who, in an effort to save his surrogate father, Crash Simpson, from dying of cancer, made a deal with the demon Mephisto. Mephisto promised to cure Crash's cancer in exchange for Johnny's service. Unfortunately, Crash perished in a stunt gone wrong almost immediately afterwards, and Johnny became the Ghost Rider. Although he has tried to rid himself of this curse many times over the years, Johnny has used his powers to punish evildoers and do a lot of good, despite the evil inside wrestling for control. He is the most well-known Ghost Rider, possessing all of the iconic powers that come with the title. As he is the original Ghost Rider, other than Carter Slade, a hero with the same name but different powers, he is the barometer to which we are comparing all the other Ghost Riders and their powers, placing him at the middle of this list. Number 4. Alejandra Jones. When Johnny Blaze gave up the Ghost Rider curse, the spirit of vengeance transferred to Alejandra Jones. Jones had trained her entire life for the opportunity to become a Ghost Rider so that she could punish the sins of humanity. Because of this training, she was able to be an extremely powerful Ghost Rider, although she lost a huge amount of this power when Johnny Blaze reclaimed the Ghost Rider identity. For the time she had it, she was incredibly strong. She had the power within her to be transformed into a kind of bomb who wiped out all of the sins of everyone in Nicaragua. Number 3. Cosmic Ghost Rider. The Ghost Rider of an alternate dimension where Thanos killed everyone on Earth. This rider made a deal with Mephisto so that he could seek out and destroy Thanos. Riding his space motorcycle, the rider teamed up with Galactus to hunt down the Mad Titan. When that failed, he went back in time in an attempt to kill Thanos as a baby. He instead raised the baby Thanos, somehow managing to make him even worse. He traveled the cosmos, punishing evildoers, becoming the first Ghost Rider to take their mission to an intergalactic level. But who was this version of Ghost Rider? What makes him so determined, ruthless, and vengeful? The answer? He's Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. You don't get much more dangerous than the powers of the Ghost Rider paired with the abilities and psychosis of the Punisher. Number 2, Robbie Reyes. Robbie Reyes was a street racer charged with taking care of his little brother Gabe, until one night he was killed in a carjacking gone wrong. Thankfully for him, his car was haunted by the ghost of his sadistic uncle Eli, who revived him and transformed him into Ghost Rider. Robbie now spends his time fighting evil, trying to be a good role model for his brother, and battling the spirit of his uncle in order to try and prevent himself from becoming a force for destruction. He has comparable power levels to other Ghost Riders in most areas, but ability to teleport pushes his stats up considerably, moving him near to the top. Number 1. Red Hulk. On a list that's focused purely on power levels, it's hard to imagine a more powerful combination than the one that occurred in the Secret of Four storyline. When Mephisto's son, Blackheart, enacted an evil plan to literally bring hell to Earth, the Alejandro Jones Ghost Rider, X-23, Agent Venom, and the Red Hulk were there to take him on. When this wasn't enough, the team decided that the best course of action would be to bond the Spirit of Vengeance and the Venom symbiote to the Red Hulk. This led to a creature with the combined powers of Ghost Rider, Venom, and Red Hulk, taking on and beating Blackheart in perhaps the most over-the-top action display Marvel has seen in years. Any other Ghost Rider variants you would like to have seen on the list? Disagree with this ranking? Let us know in the comments below, and please remember to like and subscribe to Top 10 Nerd. The Alejandro Jones Ghost Rider X-23